year ago, I think, I got an email from a guy called Sheldon Phillips, who was researching the National Estate Board in Pontypridd in 1892. We got the National Estate Board, of course, back in Pontypridd next year. And Sheldon said, you know, you think the club started in 1876. Well, that was a bit dubious anyway, because it looked as though it might be a bit late. So I found the records of a match played by Pontypridd Football Club to the rugby rules in 1873 against a Roth team at Sophia Gardens in Cardiff. So we're digging around a little bit more, and the next game that was recorded in the press was in 1874 at Ynysangharad Fields. On a flat field, let me get the quote for you. Yeah, a flat field on one of the flat fields below Ynysangharad House, kindly lent by Mr. Gordon Lennox. And Gordon Lennox, Lewis Gordon Lennox was his full name, was then the owner of the chainworks. And quite an important guy. So okay, my story set in the town. There's a lot of reading, I'm afraid, but I mean, I'll be talking over it as well. And as I say, if there is a hero, it's going to be Lewis Gordon Lennox, but we'll decide about that as we go along. As he was chairman of the local Conservative Party. No, I'm going to that. But then he was the owner of Brown Lennox Chainworks, which was a rather important industry in the locality. Lived in Ynysangharad House, which was sort of just over there. Between the years of 1873 and 1904, when he then moved out of this area. I'll say a bit about that later. Father was George William Lennox, also the owner of the chainworks, till his death in 1868. As you'll see, he's buried in the church in Glentown, and his wife. So, I mean, the family obviously had very, very strong connections to the Pontypridd area. Chainworks built on Ynysangharad Fields, on the site now occupied by B&Q, Curry's, and whatever it is. I know John at the back there worked at Brown Lennox, and
35 years.
And there may be a lot of other people in the area who spent some time at Brown Lennox. Ynysangharad House has also disappeared in the 8470. It's sort of just where the slip road comes down, really over there somewhere. And anyway, as I say, if our story is a heroine, it must be the Lady Ynysangharad, who gave her name to the fields. The name can be translated as the beloved one, and I think we still love our beloved Ynysangharad, which is here with us today. And it's a wonderful park. Anyway, let's start by looking at the fields themselves. That's a print that I found. We've got the St. Catherine's Church there. We can see the sweep around the River Rhondda going up that way. I reckon that's probably St. Catherine's Church was built in, hang on just a tick, get the dates right. Come on. Yeah, St. Catherine's Church was built in 1868, so that probably dates somewhere just after 1868, I would think. We'll see another printed Pontypridd shortly, which is a little bit older as well. That's the Ordnance Survey map from 1877. Shows the extent of the fields. We can see the chainworks there. Ynysangharad House was over here. And quite an extensive set of fields. And it was agricultural land. I mean, they were literally fields that were used for livestock and all sorts of other things. A lot of the fields now lay under the 470. I've done an overlay there where that's the sort of the reddish tinge, that's where the A470 is now. And as you can see, it's blitzed through the edge of what was the chainworks. Curry's is over there, Argos in Sainsbury's is over here, and so on. Still quite a bit of the park there. and that's the part that we've got today. I think we're probably somewhere about where that red dot is there. Okay, I think just as I found out that Pontypridd Rugby Club may have started a little bit before the 1876, history is a way of turning up new facts as we go along. So, you know, don't even believe what I'm telling you today. Tomorrow we may find out that something's happening. But let's go back to Pontypridd around 1860. And that's a print. Victoria Bridge is on the drawing. There. And that was opened in 1857. St. Catherine's Church has not yet been built. So that's a print probably dating from somewhere between about 1860 and so on. That was the railway station at the time. The Taffrail Railway had got to Pontypridd, hadn't got any further, but it had got to Pontypridd. That's the bridge over by where Marks & Spencer's is. We can see somewhere in the background the screw bridge, Brunel screw bridge and so on. You know? And we can see the edge, again, Ynysangharad Fields. So that was our town, as I say, around about 1860. What was very important for the development of the town was the fact that we had the Glamorgan Canal running down one side of the fields, as I showed a little bit further on. And also, of course, we had the coal mines that were starting to grow between about 1820 and 1860. And had it not been for the canal and the coal mines, a lot of us wouldn't be here today. Because our mothers and fathers wouldn't have moved to this area, or grandmothers and grandfathers and great and so on. A lot of the photographs that I've got, unfortunately, are much later. That's around 1900. Not many people had cameras in 1860. Therefore, it's very, very difficult to find any photographs from that sort of period. Excuse me a sec. Bit more of the canal. That's still there. Go down behind Argos, the car park behind Argos, and you'll see a little gap in the railings. Then you can walk through and get over to a bunch of graves. And there it is today. So there's a little bit of the old canal left. And again, you know, this is the history of our town. That's about all there is left. There's a bit down near Cardiff as well. That's still there, and it's now, I think, part of a nature reserve, but not a lot of it. If I go back to that, you can see, if you look at the lock there, and the bridge, we'll see the bridge again in a moment. The lock is quite clearly the one that was shown in that photograph. And there's the bridge that was shown in that photograph, still there. Probably built round about 1810. So it's been there a year or three. Not much left of the old canal now. That's a bit looking downstream from behind the bunch of graves there. You know. But there is, as you will all probably know, a nice footpath that you can follow down along that way. Pick up the Taff Trail and so on. Yeah. Right. So okay, the canal and the chainworks and the coal mining industry obviously played a major role in the development of this area. There we are. The 1865 edition of Webster's Postal and Commercial Directory described Pontypridd as until lately an inconsiderable village, but now a rising market town. Now ranks amongst the important manufacturing towns of Glamorgan, owing to the establishment of ironworks and collieries in the vicinity. So that's why we're here. It mentions the chief attraction for tourists, the remarkable bridge. I never walked over that bridge actually, but you know, you walk past it every day just about. I never actually walked over it. The population there grew greatly during the back end of the 19th century, growing from about 2,000 in 1847. It was a village, I mean, it was countryside. And we'll see in a little while how Lewis Gordon Ellis remarks on what it was like in 1870 when he first turned up here. Again, as you probably know, the town was known as Newbridge until the postmaster got a bit cheesed off because he was getting mail for Newbridge in Monmouthshire, and he managed to persuade the local authorities to change the name back to its earlier Welsh incarnation of Pontypridd. I remember what it means exactly, the bridge over the Butterpool or something?
Bridge over the Innisangharad,
Yeah, there you go. Okay, look as though Pontypridd was still sparsely populated. The canal got here in 1792. So the Merthyr Ironworks were going strong in 1792. And I think it got to Cardiff about 5 years or so later. And the canal operated until 1942, into the Second World War. But by then, of course, railways and road traffic increasingly was taking over the flow of traffic. But it was the existence of the canal, the attraction of Merthyr Ironworks, that drew the attention of a couple of guys working, as I say, making ship's anchor cables in Millwall on the Thames in London. Samuel Brown and his cousin Samuel Lennox, and they were looking to expand their business. Came to Pontypridd, and probably the reason for that, I said, the original works of Millwall and Brown formed a partnership with his cousin Samuel Lennox in 1806. But Philip Thomas was his sort of charge hand at Millwall, a guy from Neath. And he must have played some part in talking the Lennox, Brown and Lennox. They said, well, what do you think about sort of where the coal mines are? And look, you've got a spot there with a canal right next door to it. Ironworks just up the road a little bit because you're making chains out of iron anyway. And you've got coal, you've got all the fuel you need. And anyway, Philip Thomas came down here when they started the works and managed the works at Ynysangharad until his death in 1840. There's a memorial to him in St Mary's Churchyard in town. I think it's on the next slide, should be, there he is. Oh, there he was. I said, Keith Jones, who gave the last talk here, has written a book on the church, and it's amazing what's in that churchyard. It really is. It's worth a look around. Yeah, it's worth a look around. Right, where we buy. And as I say, George William Lennox took over the management of the works in 1840 until after the death of Philip Thomas, and he's buried in St Mary's Churchyard as well, and his wife. And if you look through the newspaper reports of the time, they were clearly a big family in the area. They were rich. I mean, they were rich. But again, like some rich people, at least, his wife, Rosa Ross Lennox, had many charitable concerns, health concerns, helping nursing and all that sort of thing in the area. And as we'll see again with Lewis Gordon Lennox, a guy I'm going to come on to a little bit later, very keen on the community, helping the community and working in the community. It was a rough old area, a tough old area. But apparently they looked after their workers at Brown Lennox very well and so on. So the family had an interest in this area. That's the chain works at the end of the 19th century, Ynysangharad Road, the bunch of grapes. There's the lock there that we saw earlier on and so on. All gone now. All gone, or most of it gone now. Ynysangharad House is over there somewhere. Where the bandstand is now was kind of about there-ish, I think. Yeah. But as we can see, it was a major operation, a huge operation. Yeah. What's next? Yeah. Probably seen that photograph many, many times before. Isambard Kingdom, Brunel. He's a bit of an engineer himself, built a couple of bridges down in the town there, built a couple of ships, Great Eastern, the Great Western, and the trains behind him, again, as you probably know, were for his huge ship, the Great Eastern. And as I say there, again, the well-known story that he asked George William Lennox to join him in the photograph, but he refused. So he was the only one who was hung alone in chains. What a man, though. What a man. And what the stuff that he built, you know, Clifton Suspension Bridge, I think, or at least he started it, he didn't finish it. Again, that's a photograph I dug up in the Cardiff Times. In 1906, they were making chains. Yeah, at that time they were making chains for the Cunard's ships in Mauritania and Lusitania, which were two biggest ships in the world at the time. Those chains are pretty big, aren't they? Pretty big. I love the little man. He was apparently for one of the works at that time, standing next door to them. Okay, but remember the Lennox family that I'm most concerned about here was Lewis Gordon Lennox, born in Edmonton, Middlesex, and lived in Ynysangharad house on the Ynysangharad fields next to the Chamberlains. The house was originally an old farmhouse, but it was extensively developed in Georgian times into really a sort of a comfortable country mansion. And he wouldn't have lived there unless it was a comfortable country mansion. It was only their summer home for his family a lot of the time. They still had a house, an estate in London as well. I'm going to read you now. I don't like to read too much, but I've got to read this bit. What's the next slide say? Oh no, we'll come back to that one in a minute. Lewis Gordon Lennox, he left Pontypridd eventually in 1904, and for reasons that I'll talk about now. And he was presented, or we made a presentation to him at the Getty Western Institute. On Getty Western Road. And at that presentation, Lewis Gordon Lennox, he gave a speech, obviously. I'll read you what he said. It must be more than 50 years since I first came to Ynysangharad as a dear little chap, at least in the eyes of my own belongings. During school years, all my holidays were spent here, scampering over hill and dale with my brothers and sisters on Welsh ponies. This district was all country then, and a beautiful country too, with its undiluted rivers enabling salmon to come to Treforest. Then we had lovely woods in abundance, wherein to frolic and enjoy ourselves picnicking. But alas, even one wood we have left is being ruthlessly destroyed and carted away. A great town is ever increasing around us, and we're having no railway at all, we now have no less than 5 centering in our midst. I can remember coming to Wales via Bristol, crossing in a small steamer. Remember we used to do that? You go from Western Superman and cross over Yeah. I can remember coming to Wales via Bristol, crossing in a small steamer and driving on from Cardiff to Pontypridd. In 1873, I came to live permanently in Pontypridd as a resident partner of the old firm of Brown, Lennox and Company. My grandfather started the works here over 80 years ago. My father followed, making my elder brother and myself, and now my nephew rules the old home in my stead. So the family connections were still there into the early part of the 20th century. Right. I'd just like to run through now some slides of the park. You've probably seen a lot of these before. I make no apologies, because I say nobody was taking photographs of much before that. But just an idea of Ynysangharad House over there. Well, see the bandstand. That is still there, obviously. Ynysangharad House in the background. chain works were behind the trees over there. Just run through them. Park in 1959, Ynysangharad House is over there. Again, are they? Oh, I think we're about there somewhere, I think, aren't we, at the moment?
I think so, yeah.
Yeah. So as you can see there, that the house was not far away from where we're sitting today. That was the house, imposing Georgian mansion. This part here was the part that would have been built in the very early 1800s, possibly in the late 1700s. It was extended later on because it seems that, for example, the manager of the chain works also lived in that house. And well, it was big enough to house quite a few anyway. Ynysangharad, I mean, that's beautiful, isn't it? Yeah. Now, again, some of the old Pontypriddans, I'm looking at John at the back there, can probably remember the park. I'm a Porth boy, you see, so
It was the clinic.
I'm an import.
Like we had a clinic there, but it had smallpox injection.
Yeah.
Well,
And that was,
yeah, well, hang on a sec, have a look at this one. Well, all right, that's just the house again. No, it's not the next one. Because I was showing some of these photos, and by the way, again, I got these from Keith Jones via my friend John at the back there. And somebody said, hey, I just went to the dentist there.
that's right.
It became a health centre in 1926, I think.
He was a man from up the common with bright red face, always smelled a drink and brimless black glasses, and it was horrible. I'm scared of the dentist.
So you've got happy memories, obviously.
One of the pictures are
Anyway, look, I'm edging now towards possibly my main reason for getting into this stuff, which is rugby football, which is one of my passions, but rugby football from a long time ago. As I said, when Lewis Gordon Lennox came to Louis Pontypridd in 1873, 27 years of age. Not been here long before he was planning a rugby match between a Pontypridd team and the Rose Club in Cardiff to be played at Sapphire Gardens on 18th of December. And it looks as though that was kind of the start of, they were playing to the rugby rules, which is important. He's listed in the reports as one of the players in that game. And I mean, the guy went to public school, didn't he? You know, I mean, he didn't go to the local, whatever it was. And so would have been introduced to football playing according to the rugby rules. Because that was, all the public schools at that time, they didn't play association football, which was starting to creep in, because they codified the game, and it became called soccer, didn't it, association football. But the public schools, the posh people, carried on playing according to the rugby rules, and we'll see a little bit more about that in a minute. In that first game in 1873, two more of the players, W.C. Penn and E. Penn, were the sons of the manager at the Chainworks, who also lived at Ynysangharad House. And it's likely that many other players also worked at the Chainworks. Another player, Henry Briscoe, his father was a general manager of the Western Colliery in Hopkinstown. So, you know, these were people who, a lot of them had been to public schools. And we'll see in a moment, because the next game was against Cowbridge School, which at that time was a boarding school. I had day pupils, obviously, but Cowbridge School then became Cowbridge Grammar School, was a boarding school. I say the next game reported in the press was played on 14th of November 1874, I left that bit out, between Pontypridd Football Club and Cowbridge Grammar School on one of the flat fields below Ynysangharad House. As we saw in the earlier pictures, there were plenty of flat fields around. Still, cricket pitch, football pitch back then and so on. Poor old Henry Briscoe was missing as he dislocated his collarbone while practicing for the game. And there was a report in the Cardiff Times A few days before that, reporting poor old Henry Biscoe broke his collarbone. You know, so this stuff was being reported in the local press. The report, I think that the first report I had was in the Cardiff Times, I think, but there's a commodious marquee had been erected on the fields. Thank you very much. For the convenience of the ladies. And I mean, actually the early game that I mentioned as well, the one played at Sapphire Garden, it mentions in the report the match was attended by lots of ladies who showed their appreciation, blah, blah, blah. It didn't say how they showed their appreciation, but they showed it. So, I mean, this is a Saturday afternoon in town. Shortly after 2 o'clock, the excellent brass band of Treforest, and I love the next bit, comprised exclusively of working men. If the newspapers thought fit to report that it was composed, entered the field playing a lively tune. Then this was quite a big occasion, a big marquee, you know. Gordon Lennox, he went to town. When he did something, he went to town. So just, I don't know, over there somewhere, all this is going on. On the three more blue jerseys and the Cowbridge lads had red striped jerseys. Now again, I'm going to read this next bit, but you can read it yourselves as well. It appears that the play was in accordance with the rugby rules, and by these rules, carrying the ball is a prominent feature of the game. And don't forget, I mean, rugby was only just starting to sort of come out of the public schools and into the public imagination, as it were, in 1874. But this was much oftener done on Saturday than kicking it, the ball. But what afforded most amusement to onlookers was the running business. A red-striped Cowbridgian would succeed in catching the ball from the ground and would then endeavour by his fleet of foot to carry it towards his party's goal. This was the signal for the Blues to hurry from all parts of the field and fall on the coach like an avalanche. Of course, this would bring all the Reds to the rescue of their colleagues, and all would fall blue and red in one heap, followed by roars of laughter from the spectators. They were out there, they were enjoying themselves. I mean, the brass band was probably still playing in the background there somewhere, you know. But everybody was out for a bit of fun. Again, a lot of reading, I'm afraid, but sorry about this bit. Seems that Pontypridd eventually won the game by 2 goals and a try to nothing. And think again now, I mean, these were men, probably most of them in their early to mid-20s, playing against boys who were at the oldest, would have been 17 or 18 years of age. But this wasn't unusual at the time. At rugby school, where the game started from, they used to have a match every year of the house team against past pupils. Past pupils. And sometimes the house team would be composed of about 50 players. In the evening, a public dinner was held at the New Inn Hotel under the presidency of Mr. Gordon Lennox. After justice had been done to the viands, several speeches of interesting character were delivered, and most present respect. During the repast, the Treforest Brass Band, there again, playing in a neighbouring apartment. And again, I think it's a little bit of flavour of the time. I mean, brass band was regarded as top quality entertainment, and there wasn't a lot to do, was there? You know, there wasn't a lot to do. And I'm sure that Gordon Lennox would have made sure that the meal was a banquet of the highest quality. There's a New Inn, as it was in about 1890. Most of us remember that, won't you? The manager was a horrible.
Just a page.
Right?
Just a page.
Yeah. They're a real miserable dilemma. And of course, if you went into the posh bit, you went into the front entrance there, and there was a little bar just on the right that you could go down into. And then there was the big sort of open lounge behind that, where you could have waiter service. I mean, waiter service. And eventually we know that on the other side became a sort of a pub that was the New Inn. Was it sort of called the New Inn?
Rather called a Market Tavern.
Yeah. And that was separate from the pub itself.
Yeah.
exactly.
Yeah. I'm sorry for those people who just came in, but we've got about 10 minutes to go now.
Can you rewind it?
Right. Let's talk a little bit about, the match was reported in the South Wales Daily News, and you know, this is, it was also reported in a London newspaper as well. I mean, it's amazing to think that a little happening on Ynysangharad Fields was you know, not just in the local press, but was in the sort of the national press. Anyway, while the ball was flying about the field, it suddenly disappeared over a high hedge, followed by two of the Cowbridge men who made for it by a dash through the bush. They were, however, forestalled, for De Morgan, in a splendid flying leap, sprang over the hedge and brought back the ball amid the cheers of the onlookers. I mean, you know, the reporting is wonderful. You know. It's a colourful description of what's going on. The two teams then adjourned to the new inn, where a capital dinner awaited them. Afterwards, the Cowbridge boys were cheered out of the room on their way back to the station, because that was the only way they could get back to Cowbridge, was to catch the train, which they acknowledged as hearty a response. The other club, Pontypridd, remained and enjoyed themselves with music and toasts, varied by selections from the Treforys Brass Band, until the parting hour arrived. That's rugby for you. I mean, enjoy yourselves afterwards and make sure plenty of ale flows before. Go on. I think I'm going to talk a little bit more about Lewis Gordon Lennox now. That's him and his pomp, really. You know. And he looks every part Victorian gentleman, isn't it? You know, Victorian gentleman. He went on to become president of Pontypridd RFC when it was kind of officially formed later on. Briscoe, who I mentioned earlier on, was one of the first captains of Pontypridd Rugby Football Club, and captained the side up to about 1882, I think. He was obviously a keen guy for sports. He started a cricket team in Pontypridd. The ground is still there. It probably wouldn't have been quite as good as the cricket pitch there today. But he also played a role, I think, I'm not a cricket historian, in bringing the Glamorgan Cricket Club to Pontypridd very, very early on as well, which is really quite remarkable. Part of the grounds also became a home of a tennis club and allotments around about the sort of the turn of the century. And the allotments there were for the workers at Brown Lennox. And it was a huge complex, really, you know, and it was about the biggest, well, certainly the biggest thing in Pontypridd. I'm drifting towards an end now. He was president of the East Glamorgan Conservative and Unionist Association for over 20 years. Two occasions he unsuccessfully contested a seat on the Glamorgan County Council. I don't know who won the seat. It might have been a Liberal, I don't know if the Labour Party was organised in the area at that time. Married in France in 1888, and again I think this gives a flavour of the stature of the family. You know, I mean, he didn't marry a local girl. He married Alice Elizabeth Vignol, was the daughter of a prominent civil engineer. Hatton Vignol and granddaughter of Charles Blacker Vignol, Fellow of the Royal Society. And Hatton Vignol was building railways in France. And had a huge estate and chateau in France and so on. So old Lewis Gordon was connected. And his wife again played a major role in the community for many years afterwards, charitable work and so on. After many years of service to the town, as a justice of the peace, he retired from the local scene in September 1904. And I read you a little while back his address at the Gelli Club, announcing his departure and so on. And they presented him with a motor car. Now, here's the car. Beaufort car, cost 250 quid. Now, I mean, that was a lot of money. That was a lot of money. That's 3 speeds, forward and 1 reverse. So, I mean, that was a departing gift from the town, you know, which again is an indication of the stature of the man and the family and so on. And as I say, by now his nephew was running the works anyway. And again in his departure speech, he said that his wife intended spending her winters in future in some sunnier climate than ours. Not surprising, it doesn't rain in Wales, does it? Though he did say that he would be coming back here from force of habit. There are some mentions of functions at Ynysangharad House and the Gethley Bastard Institute, run by his nephew, whose name I forget for the moment, and also by the local Conservative Association. And he quite regularly sort of cropped up at these kinds of social functions. Difficult to trace after that. He was reported as living in the Caeau at one time, and then at Ynysangharad near Usk, though he eventually moved back to London. And he died at 8 Bishop's Court, Finchley, on the 15th of January 1919, aged 73 years, which is not a bad age for the time, not a bad age for the time. Think about this man, you know, who was running a huge industrial corporation under contract to the Royal Navy, building innovative chains. They invented the link on the chain and all that. A major figure in the Pontypridd area for a long, long time. Back at East Finchley, they 70 years. But this is, I think, the sad myth. A note in the Western Mail on the 1st of March 1990 reported that he left an estate with a gross value of £300, with a net personality, I'm not quite sure exactly what that means in technical terms, of £230. Now, strange, isn't it? Mm. He had a bloody car that was worth 250 quid a couple of years before that. My guess would be that he probably shifted his money around a long time before, you know, I mean, this guy knew his way around the business world and the financial world and so on, but that's what he left. And the other little sad bit, and you've probably passed that little fountain many, many times. When I used to come here as a kid, it still had running water, John, didn't it? Yeah, it still had running water. Still there. The only memorial in the town he served so well, and the caption on there, I'll read it from you. In loving memory of Lewis Gordon Lennox, who for more than 30 years lived at Ynysangharad as resident partner in Brown Lennox Company, Newbridge Chain and Anchor Works, who was beloved by all and who knew him 1846 to 1919. And it's a reflection, I think, on life, isn't it? That, you know, you could do so much, and the only little mark that's left in the town is the fountain. But there we are. At least I'm talking about it today. So, towards the end of the story, I think I said something at the beginning, if not I missed it out, that the Ynysangharad Fields was part of the Lanaver estate. There's a pub just down the road, so called the Lanaver Arms. And they wouldn't sell the house to Brown Lennox, wouldn't sell the land the chainworks was on. But eventually they relented somewhat in 1919, and the chainworks managed to buy the freehold of the land that the chainworks was on. But the purchase didn't include the house and its grounds. They hung on to that. And there were still, obviously, people, it was a residential property at that time. If you look at the local press around about 1900 up to, say, 1910, 1912, lots of proposals were made for building on Ynysangharad fields. Might have lost the park. Because one of the proposals was to build a road bridge over where the footbridge is by Marks and Spencer's over there, to gain access to the fields and to build houses on. Thank goodness that didn't happen. The bridge was eventually built, and whether that was the footbridge that's there today or whether it was a slightly larger bridge, I don't know. But the fields remained more or less as agricultural land. As I say, I think at that time there was a tennis club on here, and they were still largely green fields. And on 18th of September 1920, the Pontypridd Observer reported that the whole of Ynysangharad grounds had been bought for £13,000 by public subscription. And the people of Pontypridd raised the money to buy the fields from the Llanover estate on the stipulation that it must be used as a public park and war memorial forever. The house was included in this purchase and eventually became that clinic that many of you attended over the years, until it was eventually demolished in the 1970s. And I mean, that moves me to my end, but definitely not the end of Ynysangharad fields. All right. It's beautiful today, it'll go on to be beautiful forever, and in the hands of Sophie and Ali, this place here is a wonderful place, I think. And so, thank you very much indeed. Thank you. Anybody's got any questions or any comments, then because you're all Ponty residents.
No, they're not.
Eh? No? I'm not like that.